Imagine an entire city, its people, its culture, its very name, erased so thoroughly by its enemies that for centuries, no one even remembered it existed. Now picture that happening not once, but again and again, across continents and empires. These aren't lost cities swallowed by the jungle or the sand. These are cities deliberately destroyed, their ruins buried, their stories banned, all to satisfy the revenge, paranoia, or ambition of their conquerors. But if their enemies wanted us to forget, why are we still digging up their secrets today? Welcome to History Owl, where today we're unmasking the forgotten cities erased by their enemies, civilizations so dangerous, so hated, or so inconvenient that their rivals tried to wipe them from the face of the earth. We're talking about more than just destruction. This is the history of deliberate erasure, where victory meant not just conquering a place, but making it as if it had never been. Let's start in North Africa, at a city whose name once struck terror into the heart of Rome. Carthage. Today, it's a tourist site outside Tunis, but 2,000 years ago, Carthage was the dominant power of the Western Mediterranean, wealthy, innovative, and absolutely hated by the Romans. For over a century, Carthage and Rome fought a series of brutal wars, the Punic Wars, culminating in Hannibal's legendary march across the Alps with his war elephants. But Carthage's real crime, at least in Roman eyes, was refusing to stay defeated. So when Rome finally conquered Carthage in 146 BCE, they didn't just sack the city, they destroyed it utterly. The Romans leveled its buildings, slaughtered or enslaved its people, and, according to legend, sowed the ground with salt so nothing would ever grow there again. But that wasn't enough. The Roman Senate passed laws forbidding anyone to rebuild Carthage. For a century, the site was left barren, as if to say, here, there was nothing. The message? Oppose Rome, and your memory will be erased. But here's the twist. Centuries later, even the Romans couldn't resist the pull of Carthage's prime real estate. Julius Caesar and Augustus eventually rebuilt a Roman Carthage, but the original city's language and culture were lost forever. All that's left are traces in the ground and the bitter words of Roman historians. If Carthage's destruction was legendary, the fate of the city of Persepolis in Persia was almost poetic in its cruelty. Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, was a marvel: terraced palaces, towering columns, intricate reliefs, all built to showcase the power of Persia. But in 330 BCE, Alexander the Great arrived with his armies. After defeating Darius III, Alexander entered Persepolis and, according to ancient sources, allowed his men to loot the city for days. The climax came during a drunken celebration, when either on a dare or as an act of calculated vengeance, Alexander ordered the city set on fire. The flames destroyed the heart of the Persian Empire, and the ruins smoldered for days. Was it revenge for the Persian burning of Athens a century and a half earlier, or just the drunken impulse of a young conqueror? Either way, the effect was the same. Persepolis, the symbol of Persian glory, was reduced to ash, and for generations, its story was told only by its destroyers. But not every erasure was as dramatic as Carthage or Persepolis. Sometimes the most chilling acts of historical vandalism are bureaucratic, systematic campaigns to erase a people's identity, their accomplishments, even their names. Enter the practice of damnatio memoriae, the Roman art of erasing someone from public memory. This wasn't just about smashing statues. It was a full-on administrative assault, chiseling names off monuments, destroying coins, rewriting official records. Emperors like Nero, Domitian, and Ghetto were subjected to damnatio memoriae, but so were entire cities that rebelled or fell out of favor. Take the city of Numantia in Spain, for example. After a decade-long siege, Rome razed Numantia to the ground in 133 BCE, scattering its people and refusing to allow any rebuilding. The city that had become a symbol of resistance was now a warning. Defy the empire, and your story will be erased. But the Romans weren't the only masters of historical erasure. Let's jump to ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, where city-states rose and fell in cycles of conquest and obliteration. One of the most fascinating cases is the city of Ebla in modern-day Syria. Ebla was a major power around 2500 BCE, controlling trade routes and boasting a unique language and culture. But when rivals from Mari and later Akkad moved against Ebla, they didn't just want its wealth, they wanted its memory gone. The city was burned, its archives destroyed. For millennia, Ebla was forgotten, its name erased from history. It wasn't until the 1970s that archaeologists uncovered the city's ruins and a vast library of clay tablets, revealing a lost civilization that had once rivaled the greats of Sumer and Egypt. Imagine how different our understanding of the ancient world would be if Ebla's enemies had succeeded completely. Now, you might be thinking, sure, ancient empires were ruthless. But do these stories really matter? Haven't we uncovered most of the big lost cities by now? The answer is a resounding no. Take the city of Cahokia, right here in North America. Cahokia was the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico, peaking around the year 1200 CE. With a population rivaling medieval London, Cahokia boasted massive earthen mounds, complex wooden palisades, and a thriving culture at the heart of the Mississippi Valley. But after its decline, rival peoples moved in, repurposing or even destroying its structures. When Europeans arrived, they dismissed the mounds as natural features or the work of a vanished, lost race, erasing the memory of the people who built Cahokia. It was only in the 20th century that archaeologists began to piece together the city's true story, challenging centuries of myth and prejudice. Erasure isn't just about physical destruction. Sometimes, it's about rewriting the narrative so thoroughly that the vanquished are remembered only as villains, or not at all. Take Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. When the Spanish conquistadors under Hernán Cortés conquered the city in 1521, they literally built Mexico City on top of its ruins. The Aztec temples were torn down, the stones reused for cathedrals, the canals filled in. But the erasure went deeper. Spanish chroniclers rewrote the story of Tenochtitlan to portray it as a city of blood and superstition, justifying its destruction. For centuries, the real achievements of the Aztecs, their engineering, their art, their philosophy, were buried under layers of colonial propaganda. Only in recent decades have historians and archaeologists begun to recover the truth. But sometimes the lines between city, myth, and erasure blur so completely that we're left wondering what was real in the first place. Consider the city of Helike, an ancient Greek metropolis described as more powerful than neighboring Corinth. In 373 BCE, a massive earthquake and tsunami destroyed Helike overnight, and survivors claimed the gods had punished the city for its arrogance. For centuries, Helike became a cautionary tale, a real-life Atlantis, its ruins supposedly visible under the waters of the Gulf of Corinth. But what's fascinating is how quickly rival cities moved to fill the power vacuum, spreading their own versions of Helike's fate and appropriating its legacy. Only in the late 20th century did archaeologists finally locate the sunken city, confirming that Helike wasn't just a myth, but a real city erased by both nature and the ambitions of its neighbors. Let's head east to the Silk Road and the forgotten city of Lulin. Once a thriving oasis kingdom on the edge of the Taklamakan Desert, Lulin was a key stop for traders moving between China and Central Asia. But as the Han Chinese expanded westward, Lulin became a pawn in the struggle for control of the Silk Road. Eventually, the Han accused Lulin's rulers of treachery, executed their king, and forcibly relocated the population. The city was abandoned, buried by sandstorms, and gradually lost to history. For centuries, its name was a byword for treachery in Chinese texts, a cautionary tale, carefully crafted by its conquerors. Today, Lulin's ruins are slowly eroding away, but the traces that remain tell a different story, one of cosmopolitan exchange, innovation, and resilience. You'd think that in the age of archaeology, with satellites and lidar and ground-penetrating radar, there'd be no more secrets left. But history, it turns out, is stubborn. Take the city of Great Zimbabwe. When European colonists first encountered the massive stone ruins in the 19th century, they refused to believe that African peoples could have built them. Instead, they invented wild theories about lost Israelites or Phoenicians, anything to erase the real builders from the story. It was a different kind of erasure, one rooted in racism and colonial ideology. Only after decades of research did historians and archaeologists restore the truth that Great Zimbabwe was the heart of a powerful African kingdom, whose achievements had been systematically denied by those who conquered the land. And yet, for every city we rediscover, how many remain lost? How many stories were wiped out not just by fire and sword, but by the slow grind of propaganda, neglect, or sheer indifference? Think about the city of Palmyra in Syria, Once a thriving center of trade, art, and religious exchange, later destroyed by the Romans, rebuilt, and then, in our own time, targeted by ISIS in an act of cultural genocide. The impulse to erase rivals, to control the story, is as old as civilization itself. But here's the part the erasers never understood. History has a way of fighting back. Every clay tablet, every buried coin, every ruined temple is a clue, a whisper from the past, waiting to be heard. Archaeologists and historians are the detectives, piecing together the evidence that enemies tried to scatter. Every rediscovered city is a reminder that memory can be destroyed, but not always forever. So, why do enemies go to such lengths to erase cities and civilizations? Sometimes it's vengeance, a final insult to a hated foe. Sometimes it's about power, rewriting the narrative so the victors look like heroes and the conquered simply vanish. And sometimes it's fear, the knowledge that ideas, even in ruin, can haunt the present. What's striking is how often these stories echo across time, from the burning of the Library of Alexandria to the Taliban's destruction of the Buddhas of Bamiyan. Erasure is a weapon, but it's never total. And that brings us to perhaps the most haunting truth of all. Every city we've talked about today, Carthage, Persepolis, Ebla, Cahokia, Tenochtitlan, Helike, Lulan, Great Zimbabwe, Palmyra, was once as real, as alive, as any city you know. Their streets echoed with laughter, their markets bustled with trade, their walls were covered in art and memory. Their erasure was meant to be permanent, but against all odds, their stories endure. Next time you walk through your own city, ask yourself, what would it mean for this place to vanish, to be erased so utterly that future generations doubt it ever existed? What clues would you leave behind? What stories would survive, and who would tell them? If you found this journey through the erased cities of history as fascinating as I did, hit that subscribe button and join us here on History Owl. We're just getting started uncovering the secrets of the past, one lost city, one forgotten story at a time. And remember, as long as we keep asking questions, history can never truly be erased.